Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Heather Browne. I am based in Orange County, California, and I am a psychotherapist, a speaker, and an author. And my story actually starts out with my mom's story. She was a paranoid schizophrenic. And so as a child, I was trying very much to understand her life and her message and how she was here and how she was not here. And so a lot of my life was in trying to keep her healthy as much as I could and here on in this reality. And it was a magical thing to do for people who have lived with people with mental illness. There can be a lot of magic and color and beauty and wonder in it. And it also can be incredibly confusing and incredibly hard. My father, to be able to keep us all at home, worked a lot. And so he was gone a lot. And so it was my mom, my sister, and I. And she loved nature. And so we spent a lot of time with nature, with playing with fairies in the yard and enjoying all the beauties that God has given us on this earth. Those are some of our happiest times. But as I got older, she became more and more disturbed, and my dad worked more and more. And it came to the place where she needed to be admitted to an institution for a while. And then shortly after that, she took her life. And our family, as does happen so oftentimes, fell apart. And I needed to find out who I was now that my mom was gone. And my focus wasn't trying to keep her here. And so I really started reading and writing and going to churches and going to temples and trying to find out what my purpose of life was. I decided to be an actress, I think because it gave me a great escape from the world. But my father was not pleased with that decision because it was not responsible or practical. And I was very sharp. So I got into good colleges, but I was going to throw it all away and be an actress. And so trying to support me in being a wise woman, he told me I was on my own if I didn't go to UCLA and do business, and I didn't. And so I went off to New York and did theater, which I loved. And in that, kept trying to find out how to help myself heal and how to find out who I was. I started to get messages back from people that I wasn't really being authentic. And I remember there was one time in my dorm room, a girl named Susan asked me what it was like to be perfect. I remember I was shocked that she asked me that. And she said, well, you're smart and you're beautiful and you're talented and everyone likes you. And I broke inside because I knew I was acting like what I thought everybody wanted me to be. And I just lost it and was crying and snot was pouring everywhere. And I remember telling her, I'm disowned. I don't even know where I'm going to go for Thanksgiving. I have a quarter in my wallet and I don't even know who I am. And so the next day I went to a therapist and started my psychotherapy journey, which I loved. And I loved finding out who I was and why I was here and why I'd had this crazy life and how I could utilize that to start to bless others. And so I started doing lots of counseling work and CAP counseling work. And I worked in a group home for teenage girls that were thrown away. Um, and I just felt this need to help. And one day, God slapped me on the side of my head and he said, instead of pretending to be someone you're not, how about you help people be who they are to be? And I didn't have an answer other than that sounded incredibly wise. And so I looked into getting my master's in counseling and was blessed to have a school that offered me a full ride scholarship as long as I worked really hard, which I did. And I have never stopped. And I love the beauty of helping someone find their own voice and their own truth and all those dark corners of our life where we've been hurt or we've been wronged or we've been lied to or been cheated to. What was that voice that was hidden? What is that part of that little girl inside that still wants to call out and still wants to be seen and still wants to be recognized? So a lot of the work that I do with women is about self-empowerment and self-vocal discovery and grounding. A lot of inner child work, of course. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a relationship or not in a relationship. It can be either way. A lot of us lose who we are in a relationship because we're trying so hard to please everybody else or take care of everybody else's needs. And so a lot of the work that I do with people is trying to help them hold on to themselves and to ask themselves, are you taking care of yourself in all the ways that you can, emotionally and financially and physically, spiritually, sexually, of course, as well. I work a lot with couples. I work a lot with grief and loss. I have a different way of looking at communication because of my mom, which is that I don't think words are where our conversation starts. I think communication starts with compassion and then an attempt for connection. And then from that, we bring the conversation. And that's something that I use, whether it's individual work or couples work, which seems to be very powerful. So I've created some online programs for communication for couples and for individuals. And I recently did a TEDx on feeling less lonely and feeling more love. And I wrote my book, Speaking with the Heart, which is a book on helping transform your relationship and your communication with compassion and connection. And that is my story, to be here to show people that our voice is important and our spirit is important, our call is important, and whoever it is that we choose to be in this world, that's up to us. And that only we are the person that can actually block us completely. There can be places where it's difficult, but it's really up to us to decide if we will allow ourselves to be our full, true, beautiful, glorious, divine self. And so that's what I strive to do each day. And it's what I strive to help my clients do as well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
A beautiful story. When I came across your work, I started cyber stalking you and found a few really common threads that we have. I run a program called Speaking from the Heart and how to land your first TED Talk. So it was interesting to watch you do your talk as well on the TED platform. Yes. But there's so many common threads in everything that you've said so far. So you have gone through quite a journey, your journey into psychotherapy. But what inspired you to specialize in couples communication, intimacy, grief and loss, and spirituality?
Well, the grief and loss was losing my mom. She killed herself when I was 16. I've also been a widow for 10 years. So there's just been a lot of grief and loss in my life. The aspect of it, the couples work, it came from a situation when I was a child, and my mom thought that the helicopters flying over the house were trying to get her. And my dad was trying to talk her out of her psychosis, and it didn't work. And so I asked myself, what does she need? which was to feel safe. So I grabbed a blanket, covered her head, and told her, they're not going to get you, mommy. And when she came out, she looked at me and her eyes seemed to say, you believe me.
Mm.
Something inside like landed. And I thought, okay, I don't. But she thinks I do, which is
Mhm.
helping her right now. And so I had this huge awareness that my reality will be different than everybody else's. And your reality will be different than everybody else's. But
Yes.
caring about the other and caring about their needs is that bridge between those two worlds. And so when I started my psychotherapy practice, a lot of it was individual, a lot of it was teens, because of course that's where I struggled so much. And then the
Mhm.
more I started to work with couples, the more I realized, oh my goodness, I have a huge awareness, because what I'll tell couples is, I'm 100% right for me and you're 100% right for you. And we're really wrong for each other. So the answer isn't who's right, who's wrong. The answer is, how do we care about each other's experience? And how do we find places of agreement? And how do we find places of connection? And
Yes.
what do we do with those places where we differ? If we were to look at the world at how similar we are,
Yeah.
instead of where we're different, we
Yeah.
do so much better in everything. But we don't choose to do that. My dad got stuck on, you know, Ginny, you're crazy. They're not coming to get you. Not, she's scared. She's
Mm.
And so there's the place of, where can I connect with you? Where
Yeah.
can I align with you? And for me, that's the core of couples work. How do I not lose my story? How do I not dismiss or denounce yours?
Yes. Because we are all having these experiences, really, when you think about
Yeah.
it. We're
Yeah.
living in the same world, but we experience the world so differently. So your mother's example was just another example of that.
Yes.
So, how have you balanced your roles as a psychotherapist, as a mother over the past 25 years? And what insights have you gained from each of these roles to enrich the other?
Mm. I knew more than anything I wanted to be a mom. I knew that more than anything in the world, uh,
Mm.
because my left my life so early, but also because so much of my childhood was not healthy. And I really wanted to give a child a healthy, beautiful, magical childhood. So the wisdom from my children is that awe is something that's right there if we choose to have it. And wonder and delight and joy and play and imagination are what lights us up. And to me, it's what taps into the creative power and the ability for anything to happen. I think children are brilliant with that awareness. And so I homeschooled mine so that we could really take who they were and who they wanted to be and just explode it out. So we studied everything we needed to study, but it was always within um, their places of focus and their places of talent, which helped me raise two amazing, amazing children. The balancing between the work and being a mom, I'm a high person and I can hold a lot. So I did it pretty well. But the place that definitely was compromised, was me hanging out with girlfriends or going on a girls' trip
Mhm.
or taking classes just for pleasure. The aspect of my life solo really didn't happen for a very long time. And I think that's why when COVID hit, into this time for me to do the programs, do the TEDx, write the book, do podcasts, go on the news, do all these things that I can share what it is that I know and I've experienced. And it's been a lot of fun to do it.
Now, you're known as the Reframe Queen.
Yes.
Can you explain what this means and share an example of how reframing has helped one of your clients overcome a difficult or challenging situation?
Sure. So everything is always both. Everything can have a good energy or can have a negative energy. A
Mhm.
yes to something, a yes to doing this show tonight is a no to me seeing a client or going home. So everything is both, and it depends which way you want to look at a problem and a situation are very different energies. So if the focus is on the problem, you're going to have a very hard time finding the solution. So in knowing that, my viewpoint is, well, where we get caught, where we get stuck, how can we look at it from the other side? If you take something like anxiety, when anxiety wells up inside of you, instead of trying to end the anxiety, the focus is, well, what is the anxiety trying to show me? What is it trying to teach me? I had somebody who had an emotional relapse. She was really disappointed in herself because she hadn't acted out in this way in a really long time. She came into session. She was very, very frustrated. And I said, well, let's reframe it. Let's not have it be a relapse. Let's not have it be failure. Let's have it be retrieval. You needed to go back to some time before, some way of doing something before, because you thought you were going to gather something in that. And what was it that you gathered? And she said that it still doesn't work. I said, great, let's retrieve that. And now you're not going to need to relapse again because you've retrieved what was missing. If you take a situation where you're struggling, if you take a situation where there's a resistance, instead of pushing against or forcing against, if you take a pause and say, well, what is there for me to find here? Let me reframe this. Not, oh, why are you resisting me? But goodness, there's a place you're not feeling safe. How can I bring in more safety for you here? How can I bring in more lubrication here? So if you take it from the other side, you will find the answer. The challenge is we tend to get stuck on the problem.
Yes.
Saying you've got to dig yourself out of the hole. Well, here's a reframe. There's no way to do that. You've got to put the shovel down and crawl out the other direction.
Yeah.
So when you recognize that, the things that we have been taught, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Yes.
That's baloney. We came into the world knowing how to cry, pee, poop, and maybe nurse. That's it. Look at all the things you can constantly learn. You can constantly grow. But we tell ourselves these things that limit us. So a reframe is, well, let me tell this story in a different way that gives me a better outcome.
That is so beautiful. What do you believe are the key elements in transforming lives into expressions of beauty and joy? And how do you incorporate these elements into your therapy sessions?
What a beautiful question. I would say that magic is in who you are about to become. If you will allow yourself to know, I've been this way for so long, and I don't choose to necessarily be quite like this, I can now become a little more than I have been, or bring more love in, or bring more joy in, or bring more openness in, or bring more opportunity in. Now I'm going to have a little bit of a different experience. We've all done life as we know up to this moment.
Yes.
But it can be anything beyond this moment. And I can change anything that no longer serves me. Just because I've done something up until this moment doesn't mean I need to keep doing it. So to me, giving myself and giving my clients that freedom, what does this still serve you? Does this still bless you? Is this the story that you want to be saying? Or is it getting a little old? And if it's getting a little old, then I just ask, well, what is the story you'd like to tell now? I'd like to be powerful and excited and alive. It's like, okay, well then what are we going to do to cultivate that? So it's moving yourself. I guess moving isn't the right word, but it's bringing yourself into the place of now, into mindfulness, and into, well, what would that look like? What would that feel like? What would that taste like? How is that different for you? We only have this day because there is no tomorrow. So how am I going to use this time right now to try to bless myself, to try to bless you and your readers? It can be anything as long as we are open to it.
And it is something funny that we all forget that there is only this moment. They say that stress is based on you worrying about things that may or may not happen. Depression is based on things that have happened and you can't go back and change.
Yes.
A lot of us are either living in the past or we're living in the future, and we forget to be present in this moment.
Yes.
That's a very beautiful reminder. So, what are some of the common communication barriers that you see in couples, and how do you help them improve intimacy and understanding in their relationships?
One of the biggest challenges is couples believing that their partner no longer wants to love them or no longer chooses to love them. And it's actually very rarely the case early on. It might happen much, much later. But when we
Right.
start to feel those little moments where we feel forgotten or the person isn't patient enough, I don't think anybody intentionally wants to mess over their partner or hurt their partner. We do. We for sure do with the choices that we make, but I don't think that's really hardly anybody's intention ever. So if you
Mhm.
remember that, one of the best exercises that I give couples is before the end of the day, ask your partner, is there someplace I missed you today? Or is there
Yeah.
some way I didn't come through for you? And would you let me do that now and take care of that now and change that now? And then also ask, where did you feel the most seen or the most heard or the most desired or the most loved by today? And would you let me deepen that a little bit more? The challenge that we have is that we stop intentionally really trying to heal and to
Mm,
grow our relationship. We get used to just being together and having it be, kind of what it always is. Instead
mm,
of realizing it's just giving that little bit more. I can say I love you, or I can say I love you. Well, one's going to feel a whole lot better. But do you
mm.
let yourself come from that place with your heart, speaking with your heart, sharing with
Yeah.
your heart? Or are you attached? And so, what I work with couples on is coming into that place of freshness, coming to that place of like, let's make this kiss wonderful. Let's make this moment wonderful. Let's not miss each other simply because we're kind of used to being together. Five
Mm,
minutes a day of true intimacy does wonders for a relationship. And you've got 23 hours and 55 minutes to do all the stuff you need to do. But most of us don't even really engage truly for five
oh,
minutes.
that is so
Yeah.
true. A
Yeah.
reminder to most couples on how to be with each other. And sometimes the longer you've been together, the worse it gets, unfortunately.
It can get really awkward and really monotonous. But
Yeah. Yeah.
why?
Mm,
Why? There's no reason for it to be. Does it take some attention? Yes. Does it take focus? Yes. But the
mm,
outcome is so much better
yeah.
than just being bored or being monotonous in how you do something. Like spice it up.
Now, let's talk a little bit about grief and loss. Grief and loss are profound experiences. I lost my mom during COVID. I just lost my dad 6 months before. Then my daughter had a miscarriage 2 weeks after my mother died. My partner's mother died on Zoom 3 weeks after my mom died. And 2020 was a very, very challenging year. How do you guide your clients through these difficult emotions and help them find healing and hope?
Well, I think one of the first things is if you really tap into yourself, your body and your heart and your soul are going to know a little bit of what it is that you need and the way that you need to grieve. And unfortunately, our world doesn't really support that. We'll tell
Yeah.
people how they're supposed to be, or you shouldn't be this way, or you should be this way, or at a year, you better be this way. There really is a very important place of letting yourself grieve. For each of those losses that you had, you grieved each one differently. Now, there's
Yeah.
also the place of the communal that happens when you've had so many so close together. There's a deepening that happens by having so many also that makes it incredibly hard. And yet you still lost each individual in each relationship. So
Mhm.
it's important to take that time to honor that and to honor what they meant in your life and how they touched you and what
Mm.
aspects of them do you choose to incorporate into your life now, so some of
Yeah.
their legacy can live on, some of their story can live on, if you will. And
Mm.
one thing that I find so odd is that we think death isn't natural. We think
Mm.
it shouldn't happen. It's
Yeah.
as natural as birth. It's just that we don't want it.
Yeah.
Realize that you're not being robbed or gypped because someone passes over. You are being left, but it was their time to go. Or if they
Yeah.
chose to take their own life, they chose to take their life. We believe that we will have people forever. We believe the story that we've told ourselves of our life will be our life. My
Mm.
husband lived till 90. Well, he lived to 51. And so I've had to rewrite that story because he
Yeah.
wasn't here for my son in high school. He wasn't there for learning how to drive. He wasn't there for first dates. He wasn't here for COVID. He won't be there for weddings or graduations. My book. He's missed so many things that I thought he would be here for.
Mm.
But that place of realizing when someone passes over, the dream of beyond has been imaginary in your head.
Mm.
For whatever reason, God, the world, hasn't given that to you. You haven't been robbed. You just don't get beyond. And
Mm.
that's very hard. And it's important to take time to recognize that and to take really good care of yourself in that place as you go through all the emotions that you do. And of course, the closer the person was to you, the more significant the person was to you, the younger
Mm.
the person was, or the more sudden it is, the harder that
It's
is.
interesting for me with my parents. The whole is so much bigger because I had them my whole life.
Mm.
Somebody said to me, but you were so lucky. You were, 51 when they died. And I think because I had them for so long, they left this really big void in my life that if somebody had died when you were much younger, you probably wouldn't have felt it as much. I mean, that's just the way I've perceived it.
I
But
imagine that's not completely true. I imagine it depends on the closeness you have with the individual.
yes, yes,
And then
that's
there's a place, like, I don't know what it would have been like to have a mother at 17 or 18 or 19 or 20 or any of those. I only had mine till 16, but I know losing her at 16 was catastrophic because I
yeah.
learned anything. And she wasn't there for so much that I wanted her for. And I had to do that without. So I think when you lose somebody, no matter how old or young you are, it's just plain hard. And it
Mm.
just hurts. And if we're blessed to have them for a long time, then we're blessed. But then it's so hard to learn how to do life without. And if you
Yeah.
lose them young, you figure out how to do life without. But who wants to do life without? So I think it's hard either way.
So, how do faith and spirituality play a role in your therapeutic work? And how do you integrate these aspects into your work with your clients?
Well, I view life as a spiritual journey. So
Mhm.
I have to be very upfront about that, because if someone doesn't have a belief in God or has differing beliefs than I have, to me they're all still a spiritual belief. But I do feel this is a spiritual journey. And then as far as my honoring somebody else's faith, that's something I take very strongly. So when
Mhm.
people come to me, it's what question I will ask. How is it that you worship? What is it that you believe? And
Yes.
what kind of impact does that play on your life? And what kind of impact do you want that to play in our work together? So I'll
Yeah.
have from people who want me to pray and read scripture, to people who want me to not mention God whatsoever, to people who
Mhm.
come in and bring singing bowls and we sit on the floor and we chant. So I will honor what everybody's belief system is. And
Mhm.
I'm grateful to do that.
You use the metaphor, storytelling, imagery, and humor in your work.
Mhm.
Can you share a favorite story or a metaphor that you find particularly effective in your practice?
Oh, what a great question. Um, yes, give me a second to have one pop into my head. What's a great metaphor? Well, one thing that I have used for grief is that it is like being in the ocean. And when you're in the ocean, sometimes it's light and it's still and you feel like you're able to stay upright. And
Mhm.
sometimes the waves are crashing and they're knocking you down and sometimes you're turned all around and sometimes there's a riptide that's just like pulling you out. I feel that when you're in the midst of deep grief, it feels like that. And part of the challenge that we have is we want to think that healing and life are linear, and they're not. You might be in
Mm.
a lovely, calm, still place, and you think, I got this. I got this. I'm floating. And then all of a sudden, that rip current comes and it pulls you down again. I think that's
Yes.
how life is a lot of times. And we believe it will be the same always, but it's not. And
Mm.
whatever state we are to go through, there's great wisdom and learning in that if
Mhm.
we're able to look at what comes up. If I'm scared to death because I feel like I'm being pulled under, there's things for me to look at of like, where is my protection in my life? Where is my surety in my life? Where do I have these places that I can hold on or call out because it is true for me? Or if I'm floating and everything is nice and calm, there's that place of telling yourself, well, this is a lovely rest and enjoy this and replenish yourself because
Mm.
or that will come at some point where the waters will change. So
Yeah.
I probably use that quite a bit in grief because it feels very accurate, but it feels accurate just for our life journey. You don't
Mhm.
quite know when COVID's going to hit or a car accident is going to hit or cancer is going to hit. And it's what do you do in those moments where life has changed completely from what you thought it would be?
You've published several notable magazines. You've been published in several magazines and you've appeared on television as a relationship expert. How has this media exposure influenced your practice and outreach?
Well, the beautiful part is people like you find me and they say, I would love to talk to you. I'm like, wonderful. So I do get
Mm.
a lot of people reaching out and asking if I'll do podcasts or asking if I'll collaborate with them in summits or help them with an article. What's also been really fun is I have reached people in places where I wouldn't normally reach. So I'll have clients, in Northern California that will call me and they say, could we work on Zoom? Which of course we can, or Southern California, who I wouldn't be able to meet with because we're at too far a distance. And then with some of the other things that I teach, I've had people reach out from other countries. And so I've coached with people in Europe and Asia. And so I've had opportunities to meet with people that I never would have met um,
Yeah.
being in Southern California. And that has been thrilling. In the future, there will be some retreat work that I'll be doing. There's a woman that I've worked with quite a bit on her podcast and in some summits for her, and she's in France. And we want to work together and do a grief retreat in Europe. And so that's something that I'm looking forward to. There's someone in Spain who wants to do a healing wellness workshop with me. So just got to find the ways to have the compensation for that to happen, and that
Mm.
will be happening. So it's opened a lot of doors. I was found by Lou Buscaglia's organization because of a post I wrote about him, and have been interviewed for a documentary about him, and that never would have happened
Yeah.
without the podcasts or the TEDx or the book. So sometimes it's not a direct line, but you'll
Yeah.
see it's happening in different places. I've met so many people I never would have met. I'm being included in a networking group whenever I sign up, which comes off of being asked to be on a radio show, which then turned into being asked to speak at an event, which turned out to someone who has a business networking organization asked me if I'd be a member. So it just kind of trickles in like fairy dust.
There's quite a ripple effect that happens once you start putting yourself out there. That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
So, my last two questions for you are a bit of a time experiment. I'm going to start off by teleporting you into your past.
Mm.
And we are going to go and have a conversation with the younger you, maybe that young girl who had lost her mom so suddenly. If you could go back and give yourself three nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those three nuggets of wisdom be?
You are always loved, even though you might not feel it from the people who are in your life. We are protected and dearly wanted in this world, on the spiritual realm, and how important that is. And that it's a beautiful thing to love your life and to choose to do things that allow you to become all of who you want to be, because there is only one you. And it's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity in this life to let yourself become whoever that is that you choose to be.
The last question is now teleporting you into the future. Like, you are speaking to somebody who's already in tomorrow afternoon. If I could take you to the 90-year-old you,
Mm.
and you're sitting on your rocking chair surrounded by your children, your grandchildren, your dogs, your cats, if you could go and have a conversation with this wise woman who has led you to this point your whole life, what would you say to her when you finally meet her?
Oh, how honored I am to be in your presence, and how much I want to listen and learn about the wisdom of your spirit and your soul, and how much I hope that I can bring you some joy and some laughter and some lightness to remind you that you are still forever glorious and beautiful and young and adored and wanted and precious. That's what I would tell my 90-year-old self.
I love that last question, Heather, because a lot of women don't realize the wise woman is already in them.
Mm.
She's that little voice that says, go left, go right, say yes, say no. And we need to learn to tune in and trust her more. I play a little game where I play with the energy of who I am becoming. I
Mm.
do my meditation, my prayers, and I ask her questions as simple as, what is the next step if I get stuck? And it comes through my dreams most of the time. Sometimes it's something I say to someone during the day that's connected to the challenge, and they'll say something. And by the end of the day, I've got it all worked out.
We know everything if we just open ourselves up to find it within us. Whether
Yeah.
asking our little 3-year-old self, what do you need? If we're asking our 90-year-old self, what would be best for you? We know.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are born with all of those knowings.
Mhm.
So, how can people find you?
So my website would be the easiest, which thank you for popping it up there. So www.dreheatrowne.com. And you'll find my book, you'll find my TEDx, you'll find my programs, how to work with me. I have an entire page of freebies. So please go on there and grab your freebies. A lot of really beautiful PDFs just to help with the journey on grief and loss and spirituality and communication. And then I also have a lot of the podcasts I've done, the news programs that I've been interviewed on. So I'd love to have you join. Obviously, I have a newsletter and a blog and all the things you have at this stage. But if people have a question and just want to send me an email, I'm always honored to hear from listeners. I always find it a beautiful thing, whether I can work with someone or not, to see if I can guide them along their journey to find what it is that might bless them.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Heather. It's been an absolute honor interviewing you today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your work. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is attracting some phenomenal women, movers and shakers in their field. We share our stories to uplift you, inspire you, energize you, and empower you. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thanks again, Heather.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.